All right, we are back with Nate from NextGen. Nate, thanks for joining us again. And we're talking today about the NHTSA investigation. It basically got upgraded to a recall. 1.4 million Ford F-150s are recalled. A signal loss to the sensor can cause the transmission to downshift several gears, potentially causing the rear wheels to lock up. So I've forgotten some of kind of why this happens. I don't know if you want to recap and kind of give everybody the, hey, remember why this happens, and then sort of maybe what the fix is to this moving forward. So yeah, I'm going to just let you have the floor.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. So, to give people some context before I answer those questions, Ford uses a 6R80 transmission in these affected vehicles. This transmission is no longer in production, it's long gone. There were a couple of variations called the 6R60, the 6R90, and these numbers that come after the letter F or R simply symbolize the torque capacity of the transmission. So, the 6R90 would hold more torque than the 6R60, and you would find the 6R90 in perhaps a more performance application and the 6R60 in a more economical application. They're common architecture, they're common designs. They're pretty much the same thing to the untrained eye. The only difference is scale. Now, what's going on here is the transmission is shifting at very high rates of speed down to second gear. And the reason this is happening is because there's something in the transmission that I would call a mechatronic. However, Ford calls it a lead frame. The reason I would call it a mechatronic is because this transmission is based on the ZF 6-speed automatic transmission that you would find in something like a Land Rover or a Jaguar or a BMW from that era, or maybe before. And so in those vehicles, it was called a mechatronic. What this is a computer inside the transmission. Instead of having a computer on the firewall or on the side of the engine, it's inside the transmission. And so this computer is responsible for all of your anti-theft stuff, the range sensor, or some people call it the TRS, stuff like that. All of those functions are inside this lead frame, mechatronic, whatever you would like to call it. And it appears that they were having an electronic issue where the signal from the lead frame that's responsible for communicating range sensor input, so park reverse neutral drive position, to the PCM is being interrupted in a way that confuses the PCM and causes it to command a downshift to second gear as though it's taking off from a stop sign or stoplight. And this is causing a massive safety issue for the vehicle. The Ford 6-speed transmission had a lot of issues with what was called pulse dampeners. People who rebuild these for a living may know that that's a common leak point in the valve body. They often need reamed out or replaced. And like all transmissions that use pulse dampeners, they wear out and create issues. And that's the reason that I designed the delete kit for them. And that seems to be a very common upgrade for these. The Ford 6R80 and similar 6R60 through 90 could so easily be a much more reliable product. It's really not the worst design. ZF designed some pretty robust stuff back at that time, and it's really not that bad of a transmission. The issue is that the few problems it does have that are well documented are so easily avoidable. And this lead frame issue is one of them. It is my personal opinion, off of the information available to me, that this problem is caused by sustained exposure to high temperatures. And this is why decreasing temperatures and trying to pull heat out of the system or prevent creating heat is important. And that's why transmissions that have a lower operating temp throughout their life are less likely to experience electronic issues in just about every transmission, not just the Ford 6-speed. But that's the recap of what's going on here.
Okay. I know I got a lot of comments the last time we did the video, and I'm sure you read some of them, that people were like, man, the 6R80 is one of the most reliable transmissions Ford or anybody's ever had. And do you think that's because of all the latest 10-speed stuff that's going on, that when you compare it to modern transmissions like a 10-speed, it actually appears reliable, like statistically?
I think that in modern vehicles, every few years, the standard gets lower and people just accept it. And this is something I find particularly frustrating in the transmission end of things, is that many modern transmissions pop at 60,000 miles consistently. That's very common. That used to not be common. Failing at 100,000 used to mean it was made cheap. And if you look at older transmissions, specifically from like Toyota and Allison, there are so many of them with 500 to 700,000 miles that run fine, many of which were never serviced. And so with every evolution in the quantity of gears that these transmissions have, so from the 4-speed to the 5-speed to the 6-speed to the 8 to the 10, every time these changes take place, there seems to be a deflation in its lifespan. And people seem to just accept that. And I just don't think that's worth accepting. I think it's irresponsible and reckless that we as consumers don't push back harder. And the reason they keep changing these things and coming out with 8 and 10 speed transmissions is to comply with emissions regulations. And so I think that the regulator cartel is responsible for a lot of this. The EPA, NHTSA, DOT, all these organizations that claim to be protecting the environment or people's safety or anything else, they impose regulations that make it impossible to sell transmissions that we have had enough time to perfect. So, for example, the 4L80E is a very reliable transmission in most cases. The 4L80E can be easily upgraded to hold very high power numbers. There's no vehicle you can put a 4L80E in. It doesn't allow for the engine to comply with emissions regulations, especially in European markets where they measure the mass of all the CO2 exiting the system adjusted for a distance. And this is why you see, grams per 100 kilometers or whatever that metric is in the EU to comply with the EU6 regulations. So the regulations surrounding tailpipe emissions and fuel economy, CAFE standards, things like that, make it totally impossible to optimize for reliability, even if these companies wanted to. Because as soon as they have enough time and data to make something reliable, which they usually don't, but even if they did, it is now time for them to change something because that transmission can no longer support the tailpipe emissions requirements in that jurisdiction or the CAFE standards in that jurisdiction. And so we go back to a point that I've tried to hit on over and over and over again, where there's two major problems with the automotive industry. And one is regulations that don't make people safer and don't make the environment healthier. Okay, I'm not against all regulations, but I'm against bad ones. And bad ones are a big problem. And the second thing is that these massive companies, the Ford, Toyota, General Motors, they have learned that engineering products that fail outside of warranty is a massive moneymaker. And they all do it. And I call it the Land Rover mentality. They're not the only ones who do it, but I think they're a particularly brazen example. Them and their boyfriends at Jaguar. They design vehicles with the intent that they fail outside of warranty, and then they recapitalize, or as I would say, re-victimize those consumers outside of that warranty window by selling them astronomically inflated parts. And so I think that it's nonsensical and dishonest, and I disagree with the business model. And I believe that's what these companies do to manipulate and disenfranchise their consumers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and going back to what you said, I remember I had a friend that had I think it was a 2005 Tahoe. I don't remember what transmission it was. Their 4-speed probably had the 5.3 in it, but it died at like 94,000 or 100,000. And I remember back then that being rare. It was like, oh, that's the first one that I knew of. And I owned Yukons. Everybody kind of had the same, a lot of those GM cars. And they, like you said, they would last till like 150,000, maybe a little bit longer before you had to rebuild them. And even the rebuild cost was cheap back then. You could take it somewhere and it'd be, I remember friends, $1,400, $1,800. They had it rebuilt and back on the road. And 100,000 was an early failure. And now it's like, I feel it in the comments and the forums and everything. Like if people make it 100,000 in a vehicle, it's like they won the lottery without problems,
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's pathetic. I mean, if you look at older vehicles, even if they failed at 100,000 miles, well, if it costs $1,800 to remanufacture the transmission, well, that really isn't that big of a deal, But now you have vehicles that are failing at 60,000 miles. The cost of a transmission is now $8, $10, $12,000 driving down the road. That's completely otherworldly, and I think that's the reason that valve body upgrades have become such a huge market. is because people are starting to realize, and I've been trying to bang this drum for years, and my firm has been trying to publish research on this topic for years, is that this is where nearly all transmission failures come from for the average person. And so this is the most effective performance and reliability upgrade you can do at the same time. And I really can't think of an application that doesn't justify up-armoring the valve body. Critically and namely, going to steel valves, eliminating pulse dampeners, things like that. I think that those are important. And that's why we try to focus on markets like that, is because it's the most valuable thing consumers can do for these transmissions. And so I just think that it's frustrating. The automotive industry is never going to learn that reliability makes people trust you. Toyota is the largest manufacturer globally for automobiles. And the reason that I believe they're in that position is because they built a reputation on being good to their consumers and building reliable products. Now, I think that they have lost their way in the past 10 years, but that reputation is still hyper valuable. And that reputation has carried them to extraordinary success. And it frustrates me that everyone doesn't care about durability, longevity, and ease of ownership the way that brands like Toyota/Lexus do. It's just not going to change. And I've been saying from day one, and I continue to be correct, they would rather convince people to come after people like me in public forum and discredit me and try to cancel me and run ads against me in transmission magazines. They'd rather do things like that than just make a more reliable vehicle. Why don't you make a more reliable vehicle and then sell the service and repair parts? I mean, look how much money there is in service and repair. Well, why don't you sell the parts and the education to the public so they can fix their own vehicles? There's an EV startup right now called Slate. If they're anything like every other EV startup, I don't think they're going to make it far, but I'd like to see them make it far, even though I'm not really an EV person. I don't own one. What makes Slate unique is they sell the ability to modify or repair your vehicle yourself. You can buy everything. And this concept is so exciting to people that the brand is going viral with minimal input into marketing.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. It's
Yep.
crazy that, hey, we're going to sell parts for our car and show you how to put them on, and you go viral. In the 90s, that was just called calling your parts department and getting a Haynes manual and like a water pump,
Right.
you know? Now you go viral. So these companies have eroded repairability to what is a carcass of what it once was. I just don't see it changing. I don't see it changing because on a daily basis, I see companies try to cancel me, try to cancel my firm, try to cancel right to repair advocates. I mean, in the technology world, I see this with Louis Rossman. Every time I see somebody bashing that guy, I can't help but wonder, you're probably not a consumer because he advocates for consumers. So
Right.
it sounds to me like you must be on the other end of that fulcrum, which means you're the people that take advantage of the consumers. It just never stops. And that's why people need to be more understanding of how their vehicles work, how these companies gang stalk their consumers. Ford, for example, is patenting eyeball tracking technology that they're like, well, this might be useful to law enforcement. I'm not going to buy a vehicle that watches my eyeballs and then tries to determine if I should be driving or not. I just think that that's wild and inappropriate. It's not going to change. And I think that that's why people are holding older cars longer and they're spending the money they need to spend to perform reliability upgrades to those vehicles. And you see this, to be honest, to the credit of this Ford situation, the 6R80 market, the numbers, at least at our firm, for people that are upgrading their 6R80 transmissions have gone like this. Well, probably because people don't want to buy a new vehicle. And they're like, okay, well, I got a quote on a new 6R80 transmission, and it was almost $10,000 installed driving down the road at my dealership. And I don't feel like spending that on a bone stock transmission. So it looks like I'll delete the pulse dampeners and I'll do some upgrades to it myself, which I have power over, and I'll keep driving my vehicle because I don't want a new vehicle. That culture change is very important because that is called boycott. That's what happens when the public says, I'm just not going to give you my money anymore. I'm going to keep my older product and I'm going to keep driving it because there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about, you and I had chatted a little bit, since everybody in the past has accused us of working together and doing affiliate stuff behind the scenes. Now we actually are considering doing something where if I had an affiliate link and link to your website, maybe I'll get a small kickback from it and someone will get a discount. Do you want to talk about that here, or do you want to take it offline? I mean, it's kind of dovetailed into what you were talking about. People are upgrading things, and if they can get a discount, great.
No, I don't mind. I don't think there's anything inappropriate about that at all. If people are going to accuse us of stuff we didn't do that there's nothing wrong with, like maybe we should just give people a discount.
Yeah.
So, what we communicated about, and I would be curious to hear the public's opinion, was if the media that you and me do together and that I do with other channels is going to get so much attention, maybe it would be useful to offer people like that a discount that is specifically for your viewership, and that can help support your channel while also getting products to people at a more affordable price that were already going to buy the product anyway. So I think everybody wins, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. So yeah, that's something that we considered, and I'm curious what the public thinks of it. But if people can save money, why not? And if they can support a channel that gave them valuable information, also why not?
Yeah, if we get something done before this video is out, I'll link it in the description or the comments, and you guys will see it. Probably pin it in some of the old videos as well once we get it figured out. Anything else you wanted to add on? Any other news? Any other transmission news with like the 10 speeds with GM? I mean, I see just your typical guys getting new valve bodies. It seems like some of them get them fast and some of them don't. It's like some of them seem to get a new valve body from GM or a rebuild. Are they actually rebuilding the internals now at the dealers instead of swapping entire valve bodies? Is that how they're solving this?
The internals of the transmission or the internals of the
just the valve body? Are they like putting in new separator plates and new valves and calling it good and figuring out like how to limp them along instead of doing full valve body swaps?
Well, transaction volume from General Motors dealerships has gone down for us, even though sales continue to be pretty stable but slowly increase. That tells me that dealerships are either being told not to install these kits or they have some sort of alternative. Well, they have the alternative. General Motors came out with a very cheap kit. It's basically another stock separator plate and a couple other things that are designed to make the code go away if you have an 0747 code. I think what they're trying to do is what they've been trying to do the entire time, which is limp people out of warranty and then tell them the truth, which is that, oh, your transmission is severely damaged and it sounds like you need a new one. And then they charge you for that. I have said from day one, and I've been right the entire time, that the intent of these companies is to produce as much income as possible and return wealth to their shareholders. And the way that they feel they can do that when it comes to repairability as a vertical is to make sure that the vehicle is reliable enough to get to the end of the warranty period so that they don't have to front the cost of repairs, but then that everything decays into nothing after the warranty period so that you have to fund those repairs. And the intent is that this process becomes painful enough that you just don't want a vehicle out of warranty anymore, which means that you then go buy another one. And there are only so many companies servicing these markets. These companies are trying to get used vehicles back into their custody, and the intent behind that is to then reutilize some of those vehicles and their components and label it as some sort of like good for the environment recycling program, which it is not. Now, if you don't believe me, then here's a rabbit hole everybody can go down. And this is the kind of stuff I say that magically there's an ad against my company in a car magazine somewhere, but I'll say it anyway. I don't care. Google your favorite car company that's currently in business and then circular economics. And nearly all of them will have a page that is oriented towards investors. And this page will educate investors, somehow not the public, about how they're trying to take existing vehicles back off the road and reuse as much of them as possible to manufacture new vehicles. And I believe the reason that they're doing this is because they are planning to start selling reman and refurbished parts in new vehicles. And if that's not what they're trying to do, then I would really welcome any alternative reason that they would do that. So go ahead, Google any car company you like and circular economics and go down the rabbit hole. These companies are lying to everybody. And the reason they get away with it is because when people call them out on it, somehow they get canceled, they retire, they leave the automotive industry. They end up like Stanley Meyer or Faisal Khalaf or people like that who were excised from the automotive industry. And I'm just, that does not intimidate me. I want people to understand that these people are lying. And it's important that people understand how they lie so that they can't be manipulated that way. This is why I tell people, stop buying new cars. If we all stopped buying new cars, they would have to change. They don't change because we continue to buy new cars.
You remember Chello on the channel?
Yeah, well, let me guess, he's still missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get a hold of him because of General Motors. They went after him. So it's frustrating. Obviously, I don't know any details. He would never be able to tell me, but I just feel bad because I re-listened to his interviews and he really wasn't bad at all. I mean, it was just honesty and he was very nice about it, I thought, considering what happened in the source and what's transpired since then. And everything's just provable. Like you've said before, after you watched his videos, it's like, it's all provable. Why are they hassling him? But it's that's how they get you. If you work there, get you to sign those NDAs and contracts and you're toast.
You know, what's really jarring is if you want somebody to sign a non-disclosure because they're working with like a patent pending technology or something, I understand that, and that's not particularly inappropriate. What I do find crazy is when the NDA has language like, well, you can't be critical of anything we do in any way forever. That's really nuts to me. I find it wild that all Chello did was tell objectively accurate statements about General Motors from literally decades ago. And the guy's now like nowhere to be found. It's shocking. And I just and they've tried to do that to me, but I never worked at one of these firms. I've been in the aftermarket my whole career. So none of those things can be held over my head. And I think that's why the OEMs are so frustrated with Next Gen Drivetrain, is because there's nobody here you can bully, because none of us have a non-disclosure from an OEM. So it's like, well, you can send us a nasty letter and say, well, we don't like what you have to say about our product. Well, we dispute the accuracy of that. Well, you can dispute the accuracy all you want, but somehow, and I'm speaking very directly to a specific company, you can dispute the accuracy all you want, but you have no facts to demonstrate that I'm incorrect. So disputing the accuracy of what I have to say doesn't really mean anything, because I have studies about how I'm correct, and you have a mean letter that made its way to my trash can. And I just don't understand. Like, just make a better product, teach people how to work on their car if they need to, and then sell them the products to do it, and you'll make more money without being heinous and immoral people. It's not rocket science. If I created a very healthy firm around supporting repairability, you guys could take my market by just selling repairability yourself, but you don't. And people sometimes ask me why I'm willing to say something in front of a camera that if people did, I would not have a business anymore. It's because these companies aren't going to do it. Ford, Toyota, General Motors, Chrysler, Volkswagen, they're not going to do it. They're not going to appoint somebody whose entire job is to advocate for repairability, and they're not going to sell parts to those people and instructions on how to do it. They would make so much more money in service and repair if they gave the public the resources they give their franchises to work on these vehicles. If they would decentralize that information to the average person, they would literally make more money. But they don't do it because they're so myopic that they think that, you know what, we'll just make more money for our dealerships for now, and we'll just hoard all of the information with them. And hopefully it'll be difficult enough to own our car that people then buy a new one when the warranty is up.
Yeah.
That's a scam, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what they're pushing, leases and 2 to 3 year bicycles. There was another YouTuber, Sarah in Tune. She does a lot of technical deep dives on new cars. And she just had a video out recently talking about what you said, where, back in the 80s and 90s, they were in the repair manual for your car that you got with your car. It had a valve guide adjustment, specs in the manual. Now it's, don't eat your battery. And it's just our society has gotten to the point where some people just don't want to work on cars. They just don't like it. They're not interested. They don't want to. They just want the thing to run 60,000 and cycle and get the new one. And that's going to perpetuate this problem for a long time, I think.
Well, that's the problem. So there's a difference between not wanting to work on your vehicle and not being allowed to work on your vehicle.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't want to work on their vehicle, that's their right. It's a free country. But when these companies say you're not allowed to work on your vehicle, that's a very different discussion. And I think it's painful and embarrassing. I'm going to continue to advocate for right to repair, and I'm going to use my firm to do that. I'm not stopping. I've said this historically, and I'll say it again. I summon people from suspension and fuel injection and turbos and brakes. I know there's a Nate at NextGen in all of those industries. I can name a few people that I think would be able to do just that. And I want to see the engineering community and the aftermarket come out against these people, because the reality is that nobody knows where the bodies are buried better than us, because we get paid to do it better, do it cheaper, or both. We're the people who find a better way forward for these vehicles. That's the only way people do business here. We have to underbid the OEM, or we have to outperform the OEM, or both. I very much hope that these OEMs learn that their culture is cancerous, it's defective, it harms the consumer. And I have a feeling that they know that, but they choose not to advocate for people's ability to fix what they own. And every attempt to cancel me has failed. And I'm just going to continue doing what I do. And I'm going to continue funding research and information and instruction manuals and guides. We have so much stuff out there that we don't even make money on, that we do because we believe it's the right thing to do. Right now, we have somebody in the company whose entire job is now creating accurate diagrams for every single valve body that we even service, and for creating accurate fill guides, accurate photography, accurate 3D exploded diagrams, etc. We're trying to put information out there that the OEM won't put out there. A lot of that doesn't even generate income for us because we can't sell it. The information is free. Well, if we spend a bunch of time and, in essence, money as a company creating diagrams that we then put out there for free, that doesn't make us money, but we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And if some finite portion of people who find that information then go on to up armor their valve body with our parts, or install a pulse dampener delete kit, or use any of the products that I design, or that we as a firm manufacture, everything's designed, manufactured by us. If somebody then goes on to do that, then great, that's nice, and that helps our heart as a company continue to beat. But most people find a diagram or something, they look at it, and then they go away. We don't make anything off that, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. And we want this brand to be about endorsing and empowering repairability, even if it's not something we can sell. It's sad to me that the companies that I grew up looking up to, because I loved fast cars, I loved the Mustang, I loved the Viper. It's sad to me that I had pictures of your product on my wall growing up, and now I'm where I'm at in life, and you sicken me. That's heartbreaking. I want to see every OEM appoint a repairability advocate. And I want to see them do what my comparatively small firm is doing with all the diagrams and the instructions and the accurate fill guides. I want to see all of them do that. And I know you guys have money to make. So I want to see you make money by selling those parts to people and empowering them to do it themselves. But I bet you won't.
Yeah, I highly doubt they're going to. Well, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it. Anything else you want to close with?
Yeah, don't buy a new car. When you buy a new car, you subsidize this behavior that is used to disenfranchise the consumer. I understand that new cars look cool, they got nice sound systems. The issue is that they're gang stalking you, they're data mining you. Look up the patents that some of these OEMs are filing. They're tracking eye movement, they're collecting data on where and how you drive, they're then selling them to insurance companies. Fact check me, look it up. I'm not making it up. Fact check me. These companies are abusing the consumer. They're not just disenfranchising your right to repair, they are stalking you. They're collecting information about you that you never explicitly gave them consent to collect. Do not buy a new car. They will use that capital to then abuse you.
Well said. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, talk to you soon.